Following was recorded in front of a live studio audience at the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe. This is the United Podcast Network.
Welcome to the Writer's Block Podcast NH. This is a podcast designed by writers for writers on the journey to being published. Joined Mandra Biscornet.
It was so healthy and nutritious.
Deborah Monk.
Can we open each podcast with a dance number?
Shelley Devlin.
It was so full of inspiration and sparkles.
Every Tuesday morning live on YouTube. And make sure you subscribe to catch the podcast anytime on iTunes, iHeartRadio, Podbean, Spotify, or your favorite podcast catcher. It's time to be inspired, feel empowered, and be well with the Writer's Block Podcast NH.
And welcome to the Writer's Block Podcast. I'm Mandra.
I'm Debbie.
And we are without Shelley today, but we have a great show for you. So thank you for joining us at the Writer's Block, where our mission is to inspire, empower, and help people be well. Today on our show, we have a returning guest, Stephanie Queen. Stephanie has published more than 25 novels and novellas. She teaches a class in novel writing and speaks at conferences and workshops on writing and publishing. So welcome, Stephanie.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Great to have you back. And via Skype, we have Mishka Tebow, an American-born actor raised in Port-au-Prince, Haiti. Mishka is best known for his roles on Dark Matter, Schitt's Creek. I love saying that one.
I know you do.
I know. Bitten. And Bitten. He's studied acting at York University in Toronto. And welcome to the show.
Thank you. Hi.
We are going to be talking about audiobooks today because Stephanie has done several audiobooks and Mishka is doing the voice of one of her audiobooks. So we're interested to find out more about that process.
I'll be happy to tell you. I do audiobooks. I turn my novels into audio because I personally love listening to audiobooks. I do so far more than reading a book now. Mm-hmm. And so it's a natural for me to go there. And this latest one is called Let It Snow. It's a romantic suspense novella, and it's mostly from the hero's point of view. So I wanted a male narrator, and I found Mishka.
And how did you find him? Did he just knock on your door one day? Because I've been waiting for handsome men to knock on my door.
I had a lot of narrators knocking on the door. I had, I put these together through ACX, which is the Audible platform for people to do their own audiobooks. Okay. And that allows us to actually audition as many narrators as who are interested. And so when you put your script out there, narrators will, and you in your script, you can also add things like what you're looking for in a narrator, what kind of voice, the kind of tone, etc., things like that. And then narrators will respond to that and submit their auditions.
Wow! So how many did
short
you get?
Clips. I had over 70. So Mishka, you were.
We had a lot of competition.
I did not know that.
Yes, I did. I had a
One
lot
of
of
70.
people.
Did you listen to them all?
Yeah.
Wow. Were they close? Were they all good? Were there many that you ruled out?
There was a wide spectrum of both talent and proficiency and suitability. And so you have to look for all of those. So the voice talent and dramatic part is something that's very important, but it's not the only thing. Mishka is like exceptional in that regard, I believe. And then there's the technical proficiency, which is in the more of the production side, and with the sound quality, the correct pacing, the lack of whatever
Accents, I suppose.
Well,
if we were to do it, we'd have to lose our Boston accent, unless someone was looking for one.
Ours isn't that bad.
No, I agree. We could find better than us.
Well, there's a lot more too, and I think part of it is also proper breathing and microphone technique. There's all. I think Mishka should actually answer that.
I do too.
Mishka, jump in and help us out about how the audition process went and what things you were doing on your end to make it a good read.
I mean, it all came at the right time. Like I've mostly been doing film and TV over here. And so it's mostly just been acting and things of that nature. But voiceover is always something I've wanted to get into. And a lot of people have pushed me in that direction and said, you should really get into that and try it. You got the right voice. And so at the beginning of this year, I swore that I would get a voice demo reel done. And I did that within a few weeks with the help of some good friends of mine. And from there, after I had gotten that, I was like, all right, now what do I do with this? What can I put this on? And what type of stuff would I be interested in doing? And the audiobooks. Once I saw that, I looked up websites and things like that. And I saw ACX and I was like, I'd love to do an audiobook. Like that sounds like a lot of fun. And so I tried that. I set up a profile, did that. And I looked through, what was, being auditioned and kind of searched through stuff and Let It Snow caught my interest because it was just something that I'm like, all right, yeah, I want to do something like that. That sounds good. And then also just reading the audition script to get a feel if, I might be a good match for it. And I felt like I was a good match for it. And so I just recorded the audition and forgot about it. And then Stephanie contacted me, which was great.
Have you reached out to any other authors?
I've done a few other auditions and reached out to a few other authors and got great feedback from them. It just wasn't the right one for them. But I've only done a few because I put myself on quite a few sites. So I've also been doing commercial voiceover stuff as well on other things. And so, I'd say since, it's been about like 3 or 4 months now that I've just been doing a lot of voiceover stuff from home, which is amazing.
Mandra, let's give him a little challenge here. Let's give him a little script and say, let's hear it in 3 different versions. The ladies of the writer's block are so hot. How about that? With a French accent, please.
Oh my goodness.
Oh gosh.
No, really, I'm not kidding. You can do it.
Let's talk about that though, because there are both male and female characters in your book. So, Mishka, can you just comment on changing your voice and some of the work that goes into even whether they're male or female characters or just different characters? Because I'm assuming they have to sound differently.
Yeah, they do. I mean, it makes sense, right? When they're talking, to each other, you need to be able to differentiate the voices as a listener. But obviously, the hardest one was Shayna because that's the female character, and it's a little difficult for me because I have a lower register, and so just having to bring it up a bit, but not making it sound too phony or too cheesy or too comical. And so that was the biggest challenge, I'd say.
Mishka, I will tell you, after listening to your chapter 2, you really nailed it there. You gave it a real lightness, which kind of makes it feminine without, like you said, being kind of squeaky and false. And so you did an excellent job. If you can maintain that, you're golden.
Sounds good. I appreciate that.
Yeah. I don't know how you have the concentration to maintain a different voice for that must be pretty difficult.
Oh no, I enjoy it. It's fun.
Really?
It's fun being able to do different voices and having them talk to each other. It's just, it's like being a kid again, but it's just the tough one is nailing Shayna, but I'll keep it along the lines of chapter 2.
Yeah.
So is it a straight read or do you do all of one character and then it gets edited?
I read it all through on one go. Okay. I just if I'm for voices especially, I kind of will take it back and then maybe do a couple passes at it, and then I'll edit it, choosing the best one that I want, or I think the best, the one that sounds the best, and then so it's mostly that part's just kind of done in editing, but I kind of go through it all in one go. It's just easier that way because you're able to keep the same tone, keep the same pacing, keep the same energy. And it just kind of flows better that way, I find.
Plus, I would think it's a scene.
Yeah.
So if you just read her part throughout the whole book, you'd be jumping from scene to scene, and then you'd be going back. So I would think it would be easier.
You can't really do that. But I have to ask you, you seem very proficient at the whole technical side too, and that's a whole different thing than your voice and acting side.
Yeah,
good question.
That is a good question. At the beginning, it was a bit of a learning curve, but I don't know. I've always been very tech savvy. I love computers. I love any sort of gadgets. I tend to find a way. I just kind of fall into it and just, spend a couple hours figuring it all out, and then eventually I do. So, and now that, we got online, so I can look up anything I want and, figure it all out from there. You can watch whatever video you want and learn from somebody else who's been doing it for a long time.
Sure.
So that's not too difficult. It's just about doing it.
Someone's done it on YouTube at some point.
Right.
Exactly. Tons have.
But I have to tell you, you can't take that for granted, because like I said, reviewed over 70 auditions, and there were a lot of people who were not good at the production side of it, technically.
Right.
And you could tell there's a lot to it, and there was just like all kinds of problems, like with the sound and
Right.
Oh, so
Right.
so do all of them? I would have assumed that you hire the reader and that you also hired someone separate to produce it.
No. No, you hire one person, and the narrator usually is the producer, because to
They're-
keep the
right.
cost down. But some narrators do hire out the production part. Is that right?
Right.
Mishka, you've heard that, and I've heard of that. But in my experience, most of them do their own production, and most of them are not necessarily good at it. I think there was out of the 70, maybe there was 10% of them who were, I think, good both at the voice and narration and the technical production. And then, of course, Mishka had the exact right
Sound
voice and
that you
sound
wanted.
for that character. And so it just was that.
So only 10%, you would
Only
say, of the
10%.
70 had quality acting ability
Both.
as well as the
The
production.
technical
Right.
ability.
Interesting. So out of 70, there really were only 7 that you were seriously
Considering.
considering. Well, your competition just went way down.
But that's the point, though. They were on there and they were auditioning.
Right.
You know what I mean? So, and I wanted to make sure this is the first, but in my series, this is a novella in a series called Beachcomber Investigations, which is a romantic suspense series with a major male protagonist and, of course, partner, female. But she's somewhat of a secondary, but a main character. But there's 9 books and 5 novellas in
Now,
the series.
does his character get carried through the series?
Yes.
Oh, you got a lot of work ahead of you, Mishka.
So I wanted to be extra careful about choosing the right
Choosing.
narrator, because you're choosing them potentially for the entire series.
Right.
Ideally.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you could have a lot of work lined up for you that way too if you're chosen for a series. I think we have some sound. I don't know, Ed, if it's
Yeah.
Ready to
if it's
go?
ready,
Flip.
easy to just.
It's easy.
It's easy, Ed.
Oh,
Thanks, Ed.
See, we're missing Jonathan today, too. Of course, we miss him, just like we miss Shelley.
Yeah, but
Ed,
Ed is nice
you're
and
doing
smooth over
wonderful.
there.
I'm much nicer.
You're so calming, too.
All right, here
So
we go.
yeah, let's
Okay.
play some
So we have a
sound.
little clip.
Mishkatebo. Dane would be in hell no matter where he went now. He stared out his kitchen window again. This time snowflakes filled the sky, obscuring his view of the bay and the ocean. Didn't matter. Let it snow. He wasn't going anywhere. Or maybe he should pack his bags and get out. Head for the next war-torn abyss. Take up the next destructive mission. Leave a mark somewhere. Try to make up for allowing his mother to die. Maybe save someone else's mother. Was it strange that a grown man, scratch that, middle-aged man, should feel like impaled gutter trash? So devastated by the death of a mother he'd seen only a handful of times in the last decade. The bullet that killed Dane.
Oh, Misha, God, I'm so sorry about those words, but I'm kind of turned on. Is anybody else? I mean, you're talking about your mother dying, but I'm still turned on. It's very inappropriate. Come on,
great.
Amanda.
You did great.
Aren't you a
Wow.
little
Great.
turned on?
Well, it's so different from his voice
I
now.
know.
which is
Is that
interesting.
different, really?
Oh, it's very
No,
very
no,
different.
you know what? It depends on some of the things he says. I can
You can hear
hear
it.
it because I've listened to this like a
Right.
billion times. I've gone through like his, you have to review.
Wow.
Anyway,
Well, if you need help going through that, I'll just offer.
Well, now
Mishka,
you're-
I'm going to offer my services.
You're going to be buying this audiobook.
Yeah.
Damn straight.
So can I ask a technical sound question? Because
Sure.
obviously I love sound.
Right.
yes.
Yeah.
What's the microphone of choice for you?
I've been using Blue Yeti mic.
Wow, that sounds good for a Blue Yeti.
Yeah, well, I looked up a lot of videos of how to properly use a Blue
Yeah,
Yeti.
it's not a bad microphone, but if you don't use it right, it's
Exactly.
a disaster.
Wow.
Exactly.
Can't you hear? I can hear a book right now with the two of them, where Ed's the kind of wise, quiet owl.
That's right. Oh,
And he's the the young stud who's
I
There's
would
a
love
part
to
for
be
him
an
in that
owl.
How about a padre? Would you be a padre?
padre?
We have a
Sure.
padre in this book.
You have a
right, Mishka?
padre?
Mhm, yeah.
well, boy,
Anyway, I thought it was well done. So
very well done. No wonder he got the job.
I know.
I'm going to start writing a romantic. What do I have to write for him? Can you do Jack Nicholson?
Jack Nicholson.
No,
I do
really?
Yes,
impressions, but I
Jack.
don't do Jack Nicholson.
Can you work on it? Because I have a book, Well-Behaved Woman Coming Undone, that is out currently, and Jack Nicholson is an imaginary friend. So he's a character.
I
On Jack
see.
Nicholson.
Jack and
Oh, yeah.
Eartha Kitt. We'll talk after.
The kid. Jeez,
Yes.
That's a stretch. Also,
I know.
I know. Imagine that conversation. Oh, gosh.
wow.
Anything else for the production of audiobooks that
Well,
we
let's
should
get to the
touch on,
nitty gritty. How about just, we're not asking personally, but just roughly, what costs are involved?
Audiobooks do cost a lot more to produce for an author because you are, you have a professional that you have to pay for their time, and obviously it's going to be putting in time. This is a shortish project, and I wanted to start out with the short one. So what you do is you pay per finished hour, meaning however long the audiobook is when it's finished. Say it's 1.5 hours or 2 hours, then you pay per finished hour. And the range is like from 50 to like maybe 500 for a narrator.
For an hour.
For an hour.
Per
Of finished hour. And what is finished hour versus, I know because we know, of course, because we're experts here.
So like
but
I said,
our audience doesn't all know.
so it would take, and Mishka, you can tell me what you take, but it's supposedly the average is it takes 5 actual hours to produce a finished hour. I don't know about you, Mishka, is that
Interesting, Mishka. Tell us, how long does it take you? I'm just working on
mean-
my voices.
I can tell.
I mean, I work in like, I don't do it all on one go, so it's hard to kind of like think exactly how long, but that sounds about right. That sounds like a good average amount of time.
So
The
for,
five.
so for
So it's
that,
hard work.
you said a range of
So the range, I mean,
is
the
50
range
to
is from
500 per
50 to
hour.
500 per
of
finished
finished
hour.
hour.
Per
So
finished
that's
hour.
basically you're paying 5 to 500 for 5 hours. 50, I'm sorry, 50 to 500.
for
50 to
5
500
hours.
for 5 hours,
Right,
I'm
so
sorry.
it was $100 an hour. That project would be 500.
If it was, sure.
Yeah.
But and obviously the range is based on, experience,
Right.
background.
Yep.
Some narrators have their own following. And
Oh.
yes, like
Oh,
Scott
I bet he's
Brick
going to
and
get
Mishka.
one.
I don't know if you researched popular narrators and other narrators and for audiobooks. There's this guy, Scott Brick, who is like the absolute gold standard.
Scott
for male
Brick?
parts.
Huh, do you know him, Mishka?
I do not know.
No, but we got to check him out. See
Well, I
what our
listen to a
competition is.
lot of audiobooks, and I
Yeah.
listen to thrillers, and he does those. And he does like the big blockbuster stuff.
And is he that good?
Ridiculous.
Really?
But Mishka is really, I'm telling you, you're going to be a star, Mishka. I'm certain.
Believe me, yeah.
Don't you believe it?
You said he
Look
was so
out,
great,
Brett.
and then we were talking to him, and I kind of thought, well, you sound nice, but I thought, well, he
It's
just
the dramatic reading.
Yes,
He's like
now I see the
really
difference.
Gets it.
Yeah.
He does. Your acting is your training obviously has a lot to do with
Right.
how well you're doing, and that's a big part of making the audiobook, come to life. I mean, really.
Right.
It's not just a street reading.
And I'm sorry to bring this back, but remember my story about Jack, the Marine base, and he's in the fight?
Yes.
Wouldn't he read that so well?
Yes. Yes.
I just now I have a reason to finish that damn book that's been haunting me.
Right.
Right.
Okay,
Make
so
an
how about
audiobook.
another question would be, Stephanie, do you market audiobooks differently than you do regular books?
Well, your target audience is different. You would use
So
a
how
lot
do you
of
reach them?
Well, I'm developing a mailing list right now for audiobook lovers, and so that's my first step into really going, at that audience.
How do you develop that list?
You can join audiobook giveaways for people to join your mailing list. So you target people who really like audiobooks and who like, romantic suspense, thriller, that kind of thing.
Yep.
And, then there's this usual through Facebook advertising or ACX does give you some promotional copies
Okay.
that you can, do giveaways, et cetera, that kind of thing. Blog about it. I go on podcasts.
Great place to talk about
Exactly.
audiobooks. 'Cause
We're
most
your
people
favorite, of course.
Most people are listening to us, so
There you go.
not watching.
Right. So there's, it's still a market that's growing wildly. There's like a 25% annual growth rate still now in the audiobook market because it's a very high-end market compared to like ebooks or print books.
Right.
They cost more. So it's been a little bit lagging behind, but so therefore there's a lot more potential.
Yeah.
Interesting.
But it's my thing personally that I love best. And so that's
Well,
why
that's
I'm
my
in it.
husband too. He listens to audiobooks
Exactly.
in the car, on trips,
Sure.
that sort of thing. Doesn't, have the book and
Right.
flipping the page. He'd
Right.
much rather
Sure.
an audiobook. And I think there's a whole market out there.
Oh, there is.
Yeah.
It's growing, definitely. And so that's me.
Interesting. Well, this has been fascinating. We've learned a lot. Mishka, can we just ask you to use that voice that you read in the book and tell Shelley that we miss her? Because Shelley's our normal co-host, and she's away at work. He's so shy. He's so cute. No pressure, man.
Tell Shelley Sparkle that we're missing her.
I'm feeling
Yeah,
the pressure right now.
Shelley Sparkle, we miss you.
What's her last name? Say that again.
Her name, Shelley. Her
Well,
last name is Shelley Devlin.
Yeah, Shelley Devlin.
Oh, okay. Well, I won't say. I'll just say Shelley, we miss you.
And
Aw,
I think you
Shelley's
should
gonna
say,
love that.
Debbie, we miss you too.
Oh, you're shameless.
And Debbie, we miss you too.
Oh, see, you're going to play that back
I
over
am,
and
I am.
over and over again. Oh, well, thank you, Mishka, for coming on with us, and Stephanie as well for coming in and sharing your knowledge about audiobooks and listening to great voices. We appreciate it, and thank you for listening. We are at the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe. Please check out the Writer's Block NH on Facebook and the Writer's Block Podcast on your favorite podcast catcher. May you be inspired, feel empowered, and be well.
The views and opinions expressed by the hosts, guests, or callers of this program do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe, the United Podcast Network, its partners, or affiliates.